$600,000 last year only gets you a $392,000 home today? Is that true? Let's find out on Living in Chicago. And folks, I'm Andrew Coppins with Exit Strategy Realty here in Chicago. You can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, at Close with Coppins. One of the biggest things that have been going around is a tweet talking about how if you bought a $600,000 home in 2021, you now, today, are only going to be able to afford a $392,000 home. Holy cow, that is a ton of money in difference. But is that really something that you have to worry about? I am here to show you how you can creatively get out of that situation, both as a buyer and a seller. Here are 3 ways as a buyer you can lower your interest rate and your risk without having to spend a ton of extra money. So first off, ask for a credit at close from the seller. Do not be afraid to ask for extra money, maybe $5,000, maybe $10,000, because if you can do that, you have lowered your liability, your mortgage liability, more importantly, and guess what? It's a win-win because the seller still gets the price that they had wanted. They're just crediting you extra money on the backside of the transaction. It can be a win-win for all. Secondly, what you need to consider is your actual interest rate. There are creative ways to lower your interest rate, including potentially buying down some points. What does that mean? You actually would spend more money up front. You might spend $1,000, $2,000, maybe even $10,000, depending on your price point. But you have the ability to automatically lower from 6%, 6.5%, to 5.5% or 5%. You can really buy down some of that interest up front. It is an upfront cost, but think about a percentage or 2% or 1.5% that's off the life of a 30-year mortgage. Now, thirdly, you need to possibly look at some creative financing options. Things like a lease purchase. That means that you're going to lease a property for a year or 2 and then engage in a purchase of the property. And what does that do for you? Well, maybe in 2 years that interest rate has gone down. Is that a long-term bet that the interest rate is going to go down? Is that to your advantage? Potentially, but also you don't know where interest rates are going to be. But a lease purchase option can be really helpful in lowering your current risk. You can also look at a lease to buy option, where you are leasing it with the option to buy within a specified period of time. There are other creative ways. Talk to your lender. You could look at potentially an ARM. I wouldn't recommend that right now, just based off of the volatility of that type of a product. But there are so many different financing options. Just look beyond that conventional 30-year mortgage. You might even have some potential for a 20 or a 15-year mortgage that works better for you. It really is all dependent upon your situation, but I want you to realize you have the option to ask for credits at closing that will help mitigate some of your risk. You have the ability to buy down that interest rate up front and thus getting you to where you would have been maybe a year ago. You have a ton of different options out there as a buyer. All right, so buyers, that's one thing. Sellers, what about you? What could you do to lower your risk of having to lower your price, right? Lower your sale, your net profit from your sale. That's the ultimate goal here, is to keep as much money in your pocket as humanly possible. So what are you going to do? One option, you can offer the buyer to purchase and buy down a point on their interest rate. You can say, hey, if you come with me at my offer price, at my ask price, I will give you $10,000 towards buying down your interest rate. That can be attractive because guess what? The buyer literally has no skin, extra skin in that game. They're getting a lower interest rate. You're actually winning as well because you get your full ask price and they're paying less in the life of their mortgage. That could be a really great win-win scenario. And most sellers don't know that they can make that offer to buyers. That can really make your listing stand out. Second on the list for a seller to minimize the risk of this fluctuating interest rate period. This is simple. Right size your price. Be realistic about what price people are willing to pay for your home. Be realistic about what condition your home is in, and take a look at the marketplace, not what it was 6 months ago or what it could be 6 months from now. We don't know what that's going to look like. So right size your price. Be realistic about the price point. Be realistic about where that marketplace actually is today. A great example of this, there are certain segments of the Chicago market that are gangbusters. There are other places, other neighborhoods that are dead as a doornail. They're just totally dead. And if you are in one of those dead markets, how do you help yourself? You have to be realistic about your price. You cannot be emotionally attached to the property. Take that out of the equation. Find a way to make your place attractive to the buyer pool that does exist. Or the other option is to wait a little bit and see where the market goes in a couple of months, but that is a risk, and you're trying to mitigate that risk. It might lower your price point, it might raise your price point, but it's much more likely on the lowering of your price point right now. So think about those things and be realistic. Right size the price to the market as it exists now. That will maximize your ability to get an offer on the table, and that is your ultimate goal, an offer and a closed contract. And third and final, if you are a seller, consider upgrades to your home, because the realistic buyer pool today expects big things if they're going to be paying big prices. And that's what they are because of the rising interest rates. They're paying a lot of money for these homes. That means they have less money to do the upgrades. You, as the homeowner, have a lot of tools in your tool bag towards upgrading it. You could look at places like Curbio. Curbio does an amazing job. They can do upgrades throughout your home based off the equity of your home, and you come with no money up front. The money comes out at the backside of your transaction, and that money is just the money that they spent. It is no extra money out of your pocket. So if you have a $300,000 condo and you want $350,000 for it, consider doing $20,000, $30,000 of upgrades. You might get that extra $50,000 on your sale price. That means an extra $20,000 in your pocket that wouldn't have existed if you didn't do those upgrades. Also, consider looking at the equity that you have currently in your home. How much do you have left on your mortgage? Oh, I bought that home for $300,000 and I have $150,000 of equity. Take some of it, use it, do the upgrades that you've wanted to do, because the buyer pool today expects upgraded in style, condition places. Those are the homes that are selling and selling quick. So if that is your goal, to sell quick, to maximize your profit, consider upgrades, consider buying down the interest rate of the buyer, or consider right sizing your price. I'm Andrew Coppins with Exit Strategy Realty here in Chicago. I would love for you to find out what it's like to close with Coppins soon, so hit me up with all of the links below. There's the calendar link. If you want to take 30 minutes and talk to me about your needs as a buyer, as a seller, whatever it is, closewithcoppins.com.